Good afternoon. Sorry, good evening almost. And being at the last session in essentially dealing in a topic which I'm by and large a generalist. So I don't think I have too much to add into, the session that we're now in, except to add probably a little more of our thoughts and concerns as we go about looking at ICT, which to me is almost like Greek, beyond my personal computer and emails and the rest of it. Having said that, I think, the session, I think, essentially looks at what we're calling sustained urban development and a model of public-private partnerships. That's what we hope to do, and know the role of ICT within that particular sphere. Now, any development, I think, essentially of the city requires continuous investment. And that continuous investment is, to my knowledge, is in two folds. One is that through the government and through taxes and things like that, that the amount that the civic bodies or the administration puts in, and the other comes from private initiatives and through the PPP model that we're trying to now focus into. But by and large, if you look at urban governance within this, and you look at the structure of the administrative processes that are in position in India, it's very difficult for any form of sustained urban development to succeed. For the simple reason that the accountability that I think you will have heard over and over again does not exist, for the simple reason that the persons who are accountable are not there. The structure of the governance that looks at cities and the way it behaves, the way it deals with cities are very, very disparate, in the sense that you have too many players in the whole event. In any state in the country, the major city is the home of both the municipalities and the state governments. Right? The Minister for Urban Development in that particular state or government looks after the entire state. Delhi is an exception, because Delhi, in that matter, is a city-state. That's probably the only city-state, except for small places like Chandigarh and Pondicherry, which can hardly be used as examples of urban governance within this country. So thereby, the accountability that one is looking at is really in the hands of a certain degree to a number of bureaucrats, and there's nobody else in that system which requires a vote to be voted back into power. So when we're talking about vision, and you're talking about the visions of cities by which growth is generated and directions of urban development take place, unless you have somebody who's like, a very enlightened chief minister, or, poor Chandrababu Naidu tried it and he lost the elections. And there are several such examples that go on. So unless this changes, and somehow we are into a position where you have in many other countries whereby particularly the mayor of a city takes charge of the city, and that is and the councillors and the people who come into the municipalities are the people who take control of the city, because they are your elected representatives of the city, which means that we have to look at the 74th Amendment in a much more serious manner. And unless that happens, there's very little chance of any accountability happening. And having said that, I think the 74th Amendment, as far as Delhi is being concerned, is brushed under the carpet. Right? We're not going to have it here. And that's a place where, where the legislation for that particular act has been made. Now, it's a good thing to know that, at least in terms of what the thinking of the government today is, that they've been thinking about inclusive development, which is nice. Because in order to bring any city to any kind of level of so-called world-classness or habitableness, that unless you're looking at inclusiveness, which means that by and large half the city's population who haven't had a say, who don't have a say, who don't have a place, who don't have jobs, who don't have all sorts of things. So if the government is now changing its heart, and there is a serious program, a big program that's coming in terms of trying to rehouse the entire slum populations and informal sector in this particular informal housing within the urban areas, and the target is apparently 5 years, and there is going to be a lot of money that is coming from many sources. So this will involve obviously a great deal of movement and a great deal of thought in certain directions. This is where I think critical where ICT comes into play to a large extent, because ICT in everywhere, as far as we are concerned and professionals are concerned, two things. One is that it's access to information, dissemination of information to a certain extent, and to a large extent a process of grievance redressal. It's also a model in which there is public participation, and this is something that's been given basically the go-by. And instead of trying to do it through ICT, is a manner in which you can, to a large extent, involve public participation. Not really from every single person who sends an email, because that'd be incredible, But even then, there is a manner in which one can use this particular technology. The other part is that within professionals, that there are technological innovations available within the computer world, and I don't have to speak too much about it, which are many, many programs and software developments that have come across from all the different software people. You know how popular Google Earth is with a very simple tool, and it helps us to look at a lot of things. So similar, these technologies are what professionals are looking at. And I think that is the one way in which, to a certain extent, you can build in a level of transparency. I know in certain states, it has brought in quite a change in terms of at least the land records. It hasn't made a difference. Like, when you go for the mutation, it doesn't help. But at least it helps you to get your papers. It helps you in Hyderabad to go to the office, and when you ask for a sanction plan of a particular area, and you don't have to go anywhere. It goes to the reception of the office, and the office receptionist gives you the data for the payment of a small fee. But that is something that the IT has been able to achieve, can very simply achieve it. And the other way that it can help is to give us tools of development, which can then be networked and be made available to many, many different sources. So Aparna, who's having a problem trying to retrieve information, if that was available on an IT platform, it would be very easily accessible and would be help many people. So having said that, I think that's more or less, I try to be brief, and I think just open up a few ideas about city governance, public-private partnerships, and what ITC can do for you. Thank you very much. Thank you for your patience. Okay.